It runs Linux kernel 3.2.4. Everything on this platform runs now off of the micro SD card slot in the back. So if the system goes down, all the information is stored on this SD card in the back.
Ok, si ustedes entienden que ya todo está guardado en el SD card, tarjeta SD, eso es algo nuevo. No sé si lo que tienen ustedes fue guardado en la memoria del reloj o externo, el SD card externo. I don't know, they did theirs in December. Would theirs be in the whole
No, they're all in the old stuff.
Okay, eso es nuevo, novedad.
Yeah, nuevo. It's totally new.
Yeah,
nuevo.
Completamente nuevo.
Yeah.
Todo.
The Linux kernel new support for Wi-Fi as well. Runs Java version 1.5.4. Now also does, you can do same things. You can enroll. All the time zone management is controlled here. I'll show you too. You know what? Let me show you another feature real quick before we even start, and this might actually help out. So you see the screen that's on the Synergy clock. If I go to the information menu down here, and actually the information menu, it's the settings menu. If I go to the settings menu right here, I can turn on VNC, which is Virtual Network Control, and that allows me to control the clock from my computer over here. So I'm going to pull up my
I'll just forget. En primer lugar, puedes ver en la pantalla como una pantalla menor donde muestra el reloj. Es como un...
Veo el video, veo el Synergy y veo también
y los dedos de Will.
Sí, claro.
Sí, ok. Y sí, ya él va a mostrar una forma de programar el reloj por el PC para que sea más fácil. Entonces, igualito como el interfaz del reloj, pero en un PC. Okay. Is what do you call it? A terminal?
Virtual network control.
Virtual network control.
You can see on the screen. On the screen, I'm on my Linux computer. I can open a connection to the terminal using my computer. And I am now controlling the terminal. So I can actually go down here, I can click F7. I'm not clicking on any buttons over here, and the terminal is changing screen. The screen that you see here, I can actually put on over here. So I can actually control the entire terminal from this place. See, I just changed the menu without touching a button. So I can control the entire terminal. So it might be easier for you to see the terminal over there. I have all the same capabilities. I can, scan the menus. I can, view information on the clock if I wanted to see the clock's IP address. It's actually being displayed to the user. We can do everything that we did before, just using the virtual network control. Down here, we now have support for video playback as well. If you want to play, say, a training video or a message to the employees, from somebody, you can actually play a video. You can kind of see the video through the VNC. It's kind of delayed, but on the screen, it's live video.
¿Entendiste? Espero de que se puede ver
Estoy viendo
el video.
El video que está mostrando, claro.
Muy bien.
So you can do that. The video, and then we can go back out to the demo menu. Again, I can control it here too. You can plug in a USB keyboard on the side too, if you need to do more, debugging stuff. You've got USB keyboard over here. You can also do take a picture. This as before. You've done the picture before. You can also stream video from the camera, so we can actually get a live picture of the video coming off of the camera as it's happening. So I click view camera, and now I can actually see the video. So it's coming right off of it. So if you wanted to monitor the station and tap into the video feed, you could tap into the video feed. So those are just some product enhancements. time zone still controlled the same. Let me go over to the another thing too I wanted to show you too. We support multiple fingerprints per user, so you can have up to 10 fingerprints per user out of the box. You don't have to have 10, but you can have 10.
¿Qué entendiste? 10 huellas. Okay.
Sí, sí, sí.
So yeah, when you go to enroll, you can do this on the old platform too. But when you go to enroll, you just type in your user number, and it'll ask you for a finger number next, and you can put in 1 through 10, and you just put 2, and then you place your finger. It also has complete localization control in a file. So when if you need to change the menus to Spanish, or if you need to change the name of the application, so like this this image on the front here that says Time America, all you have to do is edit a text file. It's grabbing the location of this image file from a text file, and that basically is what's displaying up there. So if you have your own image, you can put it right up there. You can change the date format if you want the. I know that in Europe, and I'm not sure if they do it in Mexico, they usually do day, month, year, as opposed to yeah. Okay. So some people want, that's all controlled in a text file. You don't have to recompile the code. You basically just change a few things in the text file, and the format is changed on the screen.
Okay.
So that basically allows you to put Spanish if you can do that. These keys down here as well are also able to be changed to by the text. If you want to say break in or break out, or lunch in or lunch out or whatever, you can change the text of these keys, the F1 through F4 or F4 keys up here. You can change those. Obviously, in the code, you'll have to assign what those keys actually do, but you can change all the images for the menu are also all stored. You can change these out by simply editing the text file, and it will change these images out as well. So if you want to have your own images, you can do that. It's all configured. I'll show you in the developer area. Now, if we go back over to, we're going to go to the, close that off there. So this is, I'm just going to close this session down. Look at my desktop here. So this is the Java Synergy platform. It's written for Java 1.5.4. The really neat thing about this is that everything is designed around interfaces. I'm not sure to what experience you have with interfaces. You can generate the WSDL. So you have a WSDL on your for your time and attendance application.
Hugo, darme chance, I'll see if he understands. ¿Entendiste lo que está explicando?
Sí, acerca de Java.
Ok. ¿Y sabes lo que es un WSDL? WZDL es una, ¿cómo dices? Un apodo para, what's the full thing for WSDL?
Web descriptive language, web services descriptive language.
Web services descriptive language, lenguaje.
I'll
Okay,
show them a little bit.
Okay.
That's fine. We can go through that. Okay, so in your time and attendance application, you may or may not, depending on how you implemented it, you may have something that looks sort of similar to this. I'm going to bring it up.
Si en un momento si hay algo que no es claro, nada más pregúntame, es más fácil para que yo explique lo que no entiendes en lugar de adivinar lo que...
Here we go. Okay, so you'll have something similar to this over here. So you see it's basically your service description area, right? And inside here, normally in the C++, you're generating this call, this SOAP message by hand. You've been through the code. You've probably seen how each line is formatted this way, and it's basically sending this call directly as it's printed in the C code, correct?
Okay, sí.
Well, rather than doing it this way, we can get the WSDL, and it will auto-generate the files for us. So we basically use this. This is a program called Eclipse. It's the IDE for Linux. Are you familiar?
¿Estás familiar con Eclipse? Un IDE para Linux. Es, Orlando, si estás tú familiar con algo que se llama Eclipse.
Okay. Okay. So in my Eclipse IDE, I can actually generate the handling files that basically generate this code for that WSDL automatically. So if I go in here and I go to new other and I go to web service client, I could point my web service client to this address, which is back over here. This address over here, and actually I think if I do $WSDL, yeah, that's the raw WSDL file. So if I go back over to the Eclipse and I say, okay, this is my endpoint, I'm going to put in this endpoint, it should generate, actually I've already generated files for this one, so it's not letting me generate again. But what would happen is, and I'll show you in a second, is you would hit finish because it would be, it would allow you to do it. And what you would get is this package right here. Our time and attendance product is called ExactTime. So it'll give you a package called com.exacttime. Now each of these files are basically generated automatically by that process. So this file, these are all generated by the WSDL, the thing I just showed you. Click finish and you get all of these class files to interface with. The thing that you're responsible for writing then after that is what they call the proxy handler. It basically is a thing that handles the transactions for the web service. And in order to do that, we have an interface. So we have a thing called the web service interface. So in order to interface this, graphical user environment, the actual application to a web service, you implement this web service interface. And it has functions for sending punches, getting the server time, sending multiple punches, sending a fingerprint, getting a fingerprint, and then getting any other server data that it may need to get. So as long as you implement these methods in your proxy handler, which is this class, which basically uses all these generated classes that you have over here, these are all the generated ones. You basically write this. So I have my ExactTime web service proxy handler that implements that web service. So then I run the methods to basically interface with these classes. So in order to get the employees, I run a method called get employees. It basically it returns to me employee types, which are up here. So I have an array of employees. So the employee class is generated for me automatically. And the employee, in this case, my employee class that was generated for me automatically, what the web service is looking for is that every employee has a number, a badge number, an employee number in a string, or basically, I guess it's type. But basically, this is what an employee consists of. It has an ID, it has a badge number, I can get and set it, I can do, get setters and getters for all this stuff, and basically it generates for me an employee object. So this is what you have. So what you do is when the user is clocking in order to pass the information from the application to the web service, in your send fingerprint method, you would, because the application has an interface, it doesn't matter what it's looking at. So as long as your class implements this web service interface and you're telling the program to look at this file, which I'll show you in a minute, it will go to this method and it will use this to send the fingerprint template.
Okay, yeah, and let me just make a mention. So basically, it plugs in different.
Let me kind of go over.
Io voy a revisare, es un sobrevista, pero básicamente la idea es poner ciertos. I don't know exactly. You're plugging in. Those,
yes. Okay. So let me kind of go
Yo voy a mostrarlo para que a lo mejor es más fácil verlo que solo explicarlo.
Okay. So in the project, you have a text file, a config file, right here. This is a text file. It basically is a file that interfaces with the Java application and basically gives it the names of the modules you're using. So web service package is ExactTime. Well, the one that I generated up here, com.exacttime, is basically telling the application when it first starts up, goes to this file and says, okay, what web service am I going to use? And it goes to the web service package name of ExactTime. So I have two of them right here. So I have one that's called toFile, and I have one that's called ExactTime. So the to-file one basically just prints information on the screen. It still implements the same web service as it did in the other one, as it did in the exact time one, but it's basically just hijacking it. So if I change this to file, it will use this package. If I change it to exact time, it will use this package. It doesn't matter. It gets its information from this file. The web service module is that proxy handler I talked about. It's the actual code that you write to help the application interface with your web services that you have. So basically, this simple text file does that. In the actual application, this is something that you would never touch. We're calling the web services by name. So the code that's right here says to, let's see, 1 second. So this code right here that you see right here, this code is at the very beginning. So this is the main run method. So the first, 13 lines of code, it goes to the web services class handle. It goes to the properties file I just told you about, the config properties file right here. And it looks for the web service package and the web service module. So it goes here, this config, it looks for this name, and it looks for that name. So in your case, it would be Synel. So your package name would be maybe Synel, and your proxy handler would be Synel WS for web services. So you don't have to change any of the code in the actual application. You just basically tell the config file to point to your web service. And over here in your web service file, you've implemented the interface. So as long as you implement the interface, your program is of that type. You understand?
It's okay. Okay.
So ideally, the only code you ever write is this 269 lines of code, which basically tells the application how to get data from the server, how to get fingerprints, how to send fingerprints, how to send multiple punches, etc., etc.
Dice ese es el único código que hay que escribir. And the reason is because he's borrowing, he's plugging in.
Yes, he's plugging in. It's an interface. So he interfaces his web services to this application. He can go in and make minor changes, but everything he wants to have done is already there. There's already, so an example would be like to send a punch. So this is sending a punch. So your punch is going to give you a user ID, which is basically the fingerprint being mapped to the user ID, right? You're going to want to know what time the user punched in, and you're going to want to know what key they selected, if they selected a key at all. So up here in this method, we have set action. So in my web service, if I hit the in key, which is number 5 for our purposes, if I hit the in key on Synergy, it's a clock in. It says in on it, it's clock in. If I hit number 6, it's clock out, because the key says out. If I don't hit a key at all, it's swipe and go. So down here, when I send the punch, I send the user ID that I got back from the fingerprint unit, or the MyFair card, or whatever, and we'll get to that more in a minute. It's a lot of stuff. I send the time that it happened, and I select the key that was pushed when it happened. So what this basically is basically I'm getting dialogue, or I'm getting text back from the web service. And I send my punch. So if I go over here, I make a punch consisting of these 3 things. And then this gport.record punch. So I send the web service key, I send the punch data object, and I wait for a status message. If the status is successful, I open a dialog, which basically is a screen, which is all provided for you in the base class. So I have it up here, a new message dialog box. I set the title, I set the message, and I open it up and I display it. If I have a problem, I play a failed buzzer, I set the error message, and sometimes the error message is that the server isn't connected. So you can actually modify what the error message is in your config file. So it'll go to this file and it'll say, okay, what's the error message you want me to display if I don't make successful completion of the web service? So you can change it to Spanish, you can do whatever you need to do. And then after that, it exits out and it goes back. So as long as you're, implementing, you can basically decide how you want it to look. You can have this module as like a a template for what you want to do.
Te dice que puedes tú ahora, él puede prestarte ese mismo módulo como templado para lo que quieres hacer con tu software.
Ok, sí, eso ya debería
You're saying you
demostrar.
can send him what you're showing him right now as a template, so all he has to do is make adjustments?
Yeah, make adjustments. Yes, it would
Okay.
basically.
Is that part of the SDK or would that be?
Yeah, it'd be part of the SDK.
It's part of the SDK.
Yeah. So yeah, rather than modifying, thousands of lines of code, you're basically writing a module that's probably 200 to 400 lines of code by the time that you're done. And the thing is, though, when you go to another company, and if they have WSDL web services enabled, you just do the same thing again. You just basically go to their web service WSDL, you generate the proxies, and then you just write this one piece of code again, and you don't ever have to touch the other parts of the application.
You're saying the company has a different time.
Yes. So if a different company comes along you want to interface with, and they have WSDL, you go to that, you do that same process over again, and instead of telling it to point to com.exacttime or com.syntel, you tell it to point to com.Mexico time attendance or something, and that's what they do. And so basically, it sends all the transactions that way. The interface allows you to do that. And again, you don't have to change any of the code in any of these files. The only file that you should really ever be working with is your own stuff. All this other code right here, between here and here, you don't really talk to.
Dice que eso no hay que revisar nada del código entre esos primer grupo.
Yes. So basically, you don't touch that code because basically it's the thing that generates the dialog boxes. So this is the dialog box stuff that you want to display. And everything is controlled by text files. So if you want to change the dialog of what something says, you just go change the text file. You don't have to touch the actual. Let me show you another thing. So there's that config file. There's two config files. This other config file controls some of the internal stuff like the screen size, but you can change it. If you want the clock to be formatted differently, you can change the clock format. If you want to, change what the keys say, you can change that. So I can change this. I want to have it say Synel. So I change it to Synel. You can actually run the application that you're going to run on this clock directly from your computer. So you can debug the application directly from your computer. What runs on this computer is what will run on the clock.
Okay.
So if I run the application. Actually launch. 1 second. There we go. Okay. There we go. So see over here, it says, actually, you know what? Let me bring it over here a little bit. So that's the actual application. It says Synel now. I can now export. I'm going to export this application. I go over here, and I export it out to, I make a runnable jar file. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I make a. Let me change something real quick. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I just, 1 second. I just export the runnable jar file out to the clock. So I'm going to go over to the clock. And, let's see here. So this is the clock, basically. Okay, I'm uploading a new version of the clock application to the clock. And then I am going to launch it, so all I have to do is type this one command to launch it. Now it takes a minute for it to launch, I will say that. It's going to take about maybe 1 to 2 minutes for the firmware to update on the clock. But once that's done, you'll see on the clock that button that I said that used to say quit on the clock now says Synel. So yeah, let's give it a minute and everything. So yeah, you can do full debugging. The Eclipse IDE includes a debugger, so if you want to go line by line and debug your code to figure out what's going wrong with it, that's totally available to you. Anything that you do on here, you can do the exact same thing on the clock. So you can write the whole application and test everything out on your desktop prior to putting it on the clock, and then when you export it, just like I did right now, it will show up on the clock exactly as you had it before.
sobre la aplicación Java, ¿la terminal no se vuelve más lenta?
He's asking if you switch to Java application, will the terminal run more slow?
The boot process is slower.
Para iniciar, el proceso de iniciar the boot, sí es más lento.
Yes. However,
Pero-
once you have the application running, it's just as fast and has more features than the C platform. So, like I said, I can show him the responsiveness. I mean, if I push the buttons, the actions are happening. If I push the menu button, yeah, it does take longer to boot. It takes about 3 to 4 minutes for it to boot. But
Yeah.
once it's booted, it stays up. And another thing too is it doesn't go down. There's a bunch of logic to basically catch itself. So if the terminal for some reason gets an exception or something like that, it can refresh itself automatically as opposed to having to have the clock power cycle and reboot.
Ah, okay. Una vez que tarda 3-4 minutos para iniciar. Una vez, 3 o 4 minutos. Una vez que está iniciado, corre a la misma velocidad que el C++. Pero hay más características y hay la ventaja de que si hay una excepción o error, se lo puede refrescarse sin tener que reiniciar de nuevo como el C++.
So does he see the screen?
¿Puedes ver la pantalla del terminal? ¿Es claro o no? ¿Sí, es claro la imagen del terminal?
Se ve un poco clara, se ve mucho brillo.
You can see what it looks like on my computer to him.
Siente el último botón de Synel.
You can see the Synel button, but it's a little
Turn my
bit...
lights on.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Perfecto, está bien.
¿Mejor?
Sí, ahí.
Okay, now that's better. That's a good idea.
Okay, so you can see it says Synel on the key in the bottom.
Claro, sí, el último botón, sí, ahí.
Yeah.
So that's basically all you have to do to change, a property on the clock. Now I could do a punch too if you want to see how responsive the punch is. So I put my finger on, and it made a punch, and it opened the relay, and it made the light flash, and it played a sound. So I wouldn't say it's any more or less fast. I mean, it's pretty responsive, no?
¿Crees que es la misma velocidad que el otro en reconocer la huella?
De hecho, sí, aquí se tarda también un poco cuando implemento que solo lea la huella, pero ahí está funcionando igual, o sea, muy rápido.
Okay. He's saying if anything, it's a little bit better. Sometimes the other one has a little bit of a
lag.
lag.
Las pantallas son mejores.
But the screen is better.
Okay, well that's good. I'm glad.
This is bueno.
Okay.
Qué bien.
So yeah, this is our new platform. You guys have done a lot of work with the old stuff, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
It is
Esta es
kind of
una plataforma nueva y ustedes ya tienen mucha experiencia con el anterior y no sabemos que si ustedes están disponibles en aprender algo nuevo. I said I'm not sure if they were really disposed
Se ve muy bien.
Yeah.
Another thing too is since everything is stored on the micro SD card in the back, so everything lives on there. You can take this out and put it onto your computer. So if you have punches, right now the way that the clock runs is, let's say for instance there's a hardware problem with the clock. The clock, for some reason, the light doesn't work anymore on the clock for some reason. All you have to do is take off the SD card and put it into another clock, and it will basically have the same clock ID, the same information. You're basically transporting the entire brain of the clock when you take out the SD card.
Entendían que toda la información, hasta los archivos de los registros, está guardado en el SD card en caso de que en la memoria del SD card, no el reloj, pero el SD card, en caso de que surja un problema con el hardware, un defecto de hardware, puede salvar los archivos y exportarlo al PC o a otro reloj, me imagino. You can put it in another clock too, lo que sea, pero no pierde en caso de que haya mayor un desastre de hardware, no se pierde todo, está guardado en el SD.
All of the transactions are saved in a text file on the clock.
Están todas las de not SD card the clock.
No, on the SD card. On the SD
Okay,
card.
30 días.
You can modify it to make it longer.
Yeah, y puede cambiar, puede engrandecerlo, pero por defecto 30 días de transacciones están guardados en archivo de text en el SD card, por defecto.
So
Yo
if you
podría retirar esa tarjeta y colocar una nueva y salvaguardar la
Yeah,
información.
he said you can take the old card, put in a new one, and copy the information to a
computer.
server.
So let's say
Sí,
for
sí.
some reason like your server went down and
Yeah.
lost all the information for the,
Yeah.
for the punches. All of the clocks would have the last 30 days or longer, which you can specify in the properties file of how long you want to keep the transactions. And you basically would have all of them there with the usernames, the times they punched in, the keys they pushed, and you could basically retrieve it that way and enter it manually if you had to redo it again. So all of the clocks also say that the card on the back of the clock is 4 gigabytes.
Es 4 gigas la tarjeta
Yeah.
SD.
The application uses about 200 megabytes.
Pero la
So you've got-
aplicación usa solo 200 megabytes.
Yeah, so you've got 3.8 gigabytes of space. You could put a billion transactions over the course of the lifetime of the clock before you would run out of space. You could basically keep every transaction you've ever had, ever, and you would never lose it.
Dicen entonces es casi ilimitado la memoria para transacciones. Y entonces en caso de que el servidor falla o está descompuesto, en el servidor tienes como backup el reloj. Entonces,
claro.
sí.
Otra duda que tengo es sobre en C++ necesitábamos un compilador especial. Imagino que en Java ya no es necesario.
He said he had another question comparing it to C++. In C++, he needs a special compiler. He imagines he would not need that in Java.
No, you could use the Java runtime on the clock. Java currently is at version 7. We only support up to version 5 on the clock.
Okay,
So
dice
it's an
que
older version.
nosotros apoyamos hasta la versión 5, pero ya han llegado a versión 7, entonces hay que usar la versión 5. Okay, so I explained to him that you have to use up to version 5.
Yeah, up to version 5 on the clock. Anything beyond that, it's not technically supported. So you don't need a special version of Java. So you can basically...
But you don't need a compiler.
You don't need a compiler. You can
No,
use-
no hay que usar compilador, pero hay que usar una versión de Java que es 5 o menos.
I recommend using Linux
Okay.
with Eclipse to need to do it.
Él recomienda el uso de Linux con Eclipse.
Eclipse, sí.
Oh, tú
Ya
conoces.
lo manejo.
Oh, good, he's used Eclipse.
Okay.
Qué bien.
Pues me gusta mucho el proyecto, se ve mucho más estable.
He
A mí me
says,
preocupaba mucho con el C++ que sí se reiniciaba al estar en comunicación con el servicio web.
see, Donovan says that he's worried a lot about the C++ because it reboots in the middle whenever it finishes communicating with the server. So he thinks this is more stable.
A lot
Sí.
more stable.
Mucho más estable.
Perfecto, sí, pues sí me gustaría mucho pensar aunque sea de nuevo, pero volver a cargar estas funciones que ya tenemos habilitadas en Java.
Okay. He says that he's looking forward to do. Tú ya tienes unidades para probar. He has units to test.
Okay.
Si tienes unidades de Synergy para probar,
Sí tengo aquí, me enviaron, bueno, hicimos la compra de un lote completo.
Sí.
Creo que fueron el modelo reciente de Synergy.
yeah, see, the hardware that we shipped him in December is okay, right? November, December, the hardware.
Does he have a clock that he can test with?
Yeah, ¿tienes un reloj que puedes usar como reloj de prueba entonces?
Sí.
Yeah.
I want to send him, or if he can get it from them. We use a particular vendor of SD card for our for our clocks because they are more stable and more reliable. They cost about $4 up in the United States to have this card. I can send it down to you. I mean, it's really cheap.
Ustedes pueden comprar esta marca de SD card allá en México. Es $4 aquí, no es muy caro, pero recomendamos el uso de ese marca en particular. No sé si puede ver, se llama Transcend. El nombre es Transcend. It's Transcend.
Yeah, Transcend. It's
4 gigabytes.
Yes, 4 gigabytes.
Voy a tratar de conseguirla aquí, no la he visto muy
He
popular aquí,
hasn't
pero
seen that one, but he can look for it.
I would recommend that it's a particular model too. It's a class 10 card.
Okay, es un modelo particular. Yo puedo enviarte un email, pero es Transcend a modelo, you say, clase 10, clase 10, 4 gigabytes.
It might be hard for him to find, so I'm not sure if we should just send him. I mean, the import tax would be on the card.
Ya podemos enviártelo. Not very much. Let's put the value now. Si no lo encuentra, podemos enviártelo. No cuesta nada aquí, es nada más $4, pero la única cosa es que es el flete. Pero si ustedes no tienen, podemos enviártelo. Está bien. No sé si...
déjame averiguar aquí, a ver si encuentro la marca.
Y si no, avísanos. Sí, por favor. He's going to see if he can find it. And I know we don't mind sending it, just the shipping cost would a little bit.
Like I said, I'll send Anthony information on the card.
Vamos a enviarte información sobre esa tarjeta.
And I'll also send instructions on how to convert a terminal that he has now to the Java terminal.
Y instrucciones en convertir un terminal actual que tienes a volver en ser un terminal de Java.
Sí, eso me gustaría mucho.
We like that a lot.
Okay. All right. One other thing too, before we go, we're working on it right now. It's still happening. I'm fixing the application. Some of the readers, I have HID support, I have barcode support, and mag card support. I do not have MyFair support. We don't sell a lot of MyFair up here in the States, so I will have to get with somebody up here to get a MyFair clock so I can actually write the MyFair module for the application. But the other readers it works with, so you can use mag stripe or barcode or HID, but I don't know about MyFair yet.
Okay, ya tenemos que averiguar de MyFair porque no estamos familiar con eso. So eso va a tardar un poco más tiempo. De hecho, ni tenemos una unidad de MyFair aquí, pero vamos a pedir unas unidades para desarrollo e investigación. So for R&D purposes, we'll get a couple units here so we can at least...
And like I said, the fingerprint reader works for all models, so you can use fingerprints and everything too. But yeah, like it's a lot more stable. And, okay.
Okay, muy bien. Y sin comprometer nada, yo intenté de grabar esa sesión por video y quizás por audio también, no sé. Pero si al menos lo tengo en video, voy a, si quieres revisarlo, lo puedo enviar. Pero vamos a ver si de hecho grabó bien. No sé.
Okay, sí. Pues con las instrucciones que me envíen.
Sí, a lo mejor las instrucciones sirven mejor, sí. The instructions you say will be very helpful, so. Yeah. Okay, muy bien. Entonces estamos en contacto por email. ¿Y cuándo regresará Javier de vacaciones?
Mañana mismo. Hoy tomó el día de emergencia. De vacaciones.
Okay.
Pero mañana ya está aquí de regreso.
Okay, Javier is coming back tomorrow, so they'll work together and get back to us if there are any issues. Okay. Bueno, gracias.
Gracias, Luis. Gracias, Anthony.
Okay, adiós.
De nada, hasta luego. Stop.